Okay, so if you found this video, there's a good chance that the algorithm thinks it applies to you. But let me ask you just if you think you've ever received comments like, you're too sensitive, or you're too smart for your own good, or your mom or your dad thinks you're too intense, or a really cool, strange one, something like, you bring more to the situation than is required. So if these answers are yes, and if you've seen some of my previous videos and you resonate with that, there's a good chance that you may also be a gifted empath. And so this is my term for highly intelligent, multi-gifted, self-aware empaths. And for us, we are often told in some way or form that we're too much, we're too intense for many people. And it's literally because of what makes us unique. So we are above average or advanced in certain areas where the majority of people are not. And this is not a brag because this actually causes a lot of trouble. And so since we're empaths, what we once we awaken to all of this, and I mean to everything, we can really get lost and spend a lot of time in shame and in hiding or dimming our brightness, because we are human and we still need and seek acceptance, belonging, and love. But you get to a point, and maybe it takes a decade, where you start to notice like how much of yourself you may have lost along the way of seeking this belonging and acceptance, which happens unconsciously. And so obviously this is an issue that probably affects most people, but for those of us who are gifted empaths, self-aware in this extra way, we for us the issue can be exacerbated. And let me tell you why. I will explain. So this is like the core of the issue here. And let me know if this resonates with you, if you also think like, yeah, I can see that. Because this is something that I'm just starting to put into place after like a good month of like deep dive thinking on this topic. Okay, so there is a double-edged sword that we are faced with from the Matrix, so to speak. Now, on the one hand, the Matrix wants to remain unconscious. You can watch my previous video on this topic. Unconsciousness is the essence of what the Matrix is. And so it really just wants to reproduce itself at all costs. And it's really just like the human ego writ large in this way. Now, because it wants to remain unconscious, it is not interested in your empathy or your sensitivity or your self-awareness. And actually, the more sentient you are in this sense, the less predictable you are for the automated and functionalist programs that keep the collective unconscious running. And so collectively, we've actually developed like a lot of substances that will basically work to numb you down, to quiet you down a bit, and to like just take the edge off and like keep you smooth so that you basically aren't producing friction for the matrix. Now, what is friction in this sense? For the matrix, it is consciousness, it's awareness, it's sensitivity. And if you might just offer like a completely innocuous observation about something which is just so simple to you. It's just plain as light of day, but somebody else hasn't really thought about that yet. And so you like really trigger them, and it's just like they've just never noticed what you were pointing out. And this is friction. This is where the consciousness comes in. So the second side of this sword that we face as gifted empaths, this is why it cuts both ways for us, is that while the matrix doesn't want your sensitivity or our empathy, like our awareness in that sense, that self-awareness, what it does want are our gifts. And so, or what our giftedness can give it. And there's all kinds of examples of this, particularly within the arts, within the creative fields. Creative process is romanticized, but actually like denied, disavowed, and it's the product that really matters, and it's sold on like international exchanges, valorized in galleries, and meanwhile, well, you know the story. I won't go on that tangent here, but the point is that as soon as you come in and it's clear to the matrix that you've got a little something extra going on, like maybe you're the 3-year-old who's already composing stuff on the piano, or maybe you're already very highly verbal, highly relational before you've even like had much socialization at all, like a super young age. Basically, like the habitual and unconscious social systems everywhere are going to effectively groom this part of you at the expense of your sensitivity, or at the expense and disavowal of your full awareness. So bear with me here with this explanation. Like what I'm trying to get at here, and I hope you see, is the nature of the distortion that starts happening like right away. And this is where like the topic really gets into deep territory. And even with myself, like I've only really brought this into focus like after a month of like thinking hard about this. It's almost as if there's already like an original dissociation between the fullness and complete authenticity of who we are as humans when we incarnate, versus this kind of like mechanism that comes in, and like, if you'll pardon this now cliched metaphor, it is like wanting to harvest the fruits of our gifts. And so let me share just a really important caveat, especially for anyone who should happen to be new to people talking about the matrix. Although the matrix is a simplification, it's not a metaphor. It's actually a best of fit model for describing these phenomena at the level of individual experience. And what matters about a model is only that it effectively captures the relationships between what you want to understand. And so, to go back to the main thread here, what this means for us as gifted empaths is that it really points to our need to integrate our cognitive and integrative intelligence with our sensitivity, or our sentience, our empathic intelligence. And these are, I guess, like the two sides that have really been polarized by our society, celebrating and exploiting one on the one hand, and then really denying or suppressing or even punishing the other. And we also can see an echo of this in other conversations. For example, like with the overvaluation of masculine energies, and with the suppression or punishment of the feminine. And so in our context as highly intelligent, highly self-aware people, this really takes on the form of a dissociation between our gifts and our empathic qualities, which really are a subset of giftedness in my view. But it's just that these don't serve the unconsciousness and the unconscious programming, so they have to be denied, they have to be suppressed. And so this can show up in women specifically in a certain way, which is that we may be more likely or more susceptible to a kind of self-censoring or a downplaying and disavowing of the full depth or full breadth of our intelligence, in favor of qualities from our empathic intelligence that better fit with social ideas and expectations for what the feminine is within the matrix. So in my case, I can tell you, for example, I started noticing this maybe around the age of 16. I was like a top student. Like I was, valedictorian. I did all the straight A's and everything. Like I'm really good with math. And then all of a sudden, around 16 or maybe late 15, like I started to say things like, well, I don't know. And like my best friend at the time would comment on that. Like it was this unique thing about my language. I don't know. Like I would just resort to this. I felt like I didn't know. And I kind of developed a real like timidity going into my early university years, where, I would learn that like some of my comments and perceptions were perceived as highly unique or highly original by my professors, which sounds like a good thing. But and these were people I revered. These were my good professors, like, the ones you really look up to. And yet it really frightened me, because I also just desperately needed to feel like I belonged or feel like I was accepted by this group of people who I felt like they were finally on my level. Like I could see myself in that position. Like I could relate. They were on my level. And so I kind of just taught myself, kind of ironically, to kind of slightly like layer over or like take the edge off a bit of this like depth of my originality, and in order to kind of more smoothly move through the academic system. But the irony, of course, is that I didn't need to do that. I was already being seen. And if I had been able to like recognize that within myself, there would have been no issue. And so, really, I was just responding to this original dissociation that we have, this disconnection our society fosters and requires between giftedness and our empathy, our empathic side, the sentience and the self-awareness of our full embodiment. So anyone in a sense can be gifted. I mean, if you're just talking cognitively and creatively, we can call AI gifted, but it's really bringing in your full empathy. It's bringing in your heart-centered awareness. Bringing that consciousness online is the door that allows your authenticity to enter. And authenticity is actually what's not recognized by the matrix. It can't recognize authenticity because it's unconscious, and you need consciousness for doing that. And again, I try to talk about this in my previous video, so you could check that out. Authenticity will always bring friction into the matrix by definition. So the lesson here for us as gifted empaths is that like we're on this unique journey of integrating authenticity, and it's not just on the cognitive or academic or creative levels, but it's with the full depths of who we are as embodied human beings. Now, you're smart if you hear this and think, well, this just kind of sounds like the spiritual path. And you'd be right. That's actually the connection that I've been trying to get at in, I think it's 2 videos ago now. Like I have a video on giftedness explained, and another one like a few before that where I'm trying to get at the nature of this connection, this continuum with what giftedness really is. Like it's much deeper than simply having multiple talents or having like high IQ or something. It's actually a transcendent or an orientation towards the transcendent, towards ever higher levels of integration. This is how I understand it. So I do encourage you to subscribe to the channel and check out some of these earlier videos, and let me know if this resonates with you. I'm just going through new levels of integration myself, actually. Each time I look more closely at this and more closely examine my own history in light of new contexts for thinking about giftedness and having gifts. So there are real links between our creative gifts and the idea that we have spiritual gifts, that we are not just biological entities here, but we have a transcendent component, an innate drive and desire for transcendence, which is informing like what it means to be human and to come in with these gifts when we say everyone's here with certain gifts. So let me know what you think, and thanks for watching, and I will see you in the comments.